Hey guys, it's David from Automotive Press. As you guys know, I just purchased a 2025 third gen Lexus GX, which is now called GX 550, but I also kept my 2023 GX 460, which is a second gen GX. So I thought it would be really fun and also really interesting to compare the second gen to third gen GX and see if I really do like the new gen better, because this one still has the beautiful 4.6 liter V8 engine. And as you know, this one has downsized to a 3.4 liter twin turbo V6 engine, but it has plenty of power and torque, especially at low RPM. The two drive quite differently. In some way, this is better. In some way, the new one is better. So I want to tell you everything about the differences between the two models and tell you which one I like better. Let's go. Welcome back. So here we have the 2023 GX 460, which I've owned now for a few years. Beautiful V8 powered last gen for GX with a V8 engine. This is a second generation, and this is the newest edition of the GX, but not the first year, which was 2024. This is the second year, 2025, which is a better year to buy because they fixed a whole bunch of things just in that short 1 year period. But either way, you're probably curious to know if the new gen is truly better than the old gen, because this one is a timeless classic with a beautiful V8 engine, whereas this one has moved to a modern age with a 3.4 liter twin turbo V6. No hybrid on this one though. So let's see if the two really feel different or same in some way, because they're both still GX. Starting with the quality control, because they are both built at the Tahara plant in Japan, which is probably the best factory in the world. I've been to that factory many times, and let's see if the 25 GX is any different than the 23 in terms of exterior quality. So let's start with the 23. I'll measure the gaps as I always do, and then take my 2025 for comparison and see if they actually improved. So as you can tell, the design is very different when you compare the two. You can see the new GX is taller, bigger in almost every dimension, but also the hood design is very different, because on the new GX, the hood kind of goes over like a clamshell design, more like a Land Rover style. Whereas on the old GX is the traditional hood and the front fender. But I know from my previous comparison with other GX models that this one has one of the best quality, just absolutely bar none. And you can tell that because it's 2.9 millimeter there, also 2.9 millimeter there with the perfect alignment. It's just all the way straight as an arrow. And over here is 3 millimeter exactly, a bit wider at 3.1 millimeter, and here 3 millimeter as well. So very consistent, beautiful paint job, which I'll talk about a little bit later. It's the same on the other side when I measured earlier, so I'm not going to do that right now on the video, but it's more or less the same quality on left and right side of the old GX. On the new GX, as I mentioned, this one is a clamshell design, goes over here, so the actual hood line is very low in the front fender. It's almost the same, but it is definitely wider. It's 3.2 millimeter there, 3.1 millimeter, but straight as an arrow too. Although this part right here, there's just a little bit of an overhang, just a tiny bit, not too noticeable. But here it's about the same as the old GX, 3.1 millimeter also. 3 millimeters, a little bit better than the old GX, and here 3 millimeter as well. So actually, the door gap's a little bit better than the old GX, just by tiny amount, but the hood alignment is a little bit off compared to the old one, just by small amount. You probably wouldn't even notice it unless you're actually measuring something. And the gap here is tiny bit wider also, but I would say more or less the two are exactly the same in terms of panel fit, panel alignment, with a slight nod to the old GX. But again, this is a new model. It's still in early production. By the time this GX hit third or fourth or fifth year, most likely the quality control will get better, and most likely will be equal to what I see in the old GX. But there's no question that the overall quality of the 2023 GX is probably the best in the world, with amazing level of alignment and exterior quality. What about the paint job? Well, we are comparing a white metallic to this gray non-metallic paint, so it's not a quite apple to apple comparison, but the paint job is, just generally speaking, looks almost identical. There are less orange peel on this one, but that's because it's white and it's hard to see the orange peel. But in terms of overall reflection, overall paint quality, I would say it's really the same. But let's see how the paint thickness might differ between these two models. So let me measure the paint thickness now. Okay, so I got my paint thickness gauge. I want the paint thickness to be between 100 to 150 microns. Usually Lexus models are thicker by nature, usually almost 130 to 160 microns. But let's see what the paint thickness difference might be. Now keep in mind that this is a pearl metallic paint, so it may have a slightly thicker clear coat, and therefore that might reflect in the paint thickness. Let's find out if that's the case. 138 microns in the front. What about the front fender? 130 microns. Front door 147, which is pretty thick. 130, and one more here, 131. So it's more or less very consistent across the board, give or take about 130 plus on the old 2023 GX. What about my new one here on the 2025 model? 194 microns. So it's actually quite a bit thicker, at least in the front hood, than my old one, which surprised me. 166 microns on the front fender, also thicker than my 23. 172 microns. 164, and last one, 161. So also very consistent, but it's about 30 microns thicker than the 2023. Now it's a little bit hard to tell if they actually made the paint thicker, or is it because it's still early production models that they haven't quite figured a way to thin the paint. Because over time, what Lexus or Toyota engineers would do is try to make the paint thinner and thinner without affecting the quality of the paint, because they want to save time, they want to save money, and they probably haven't had a chance to do that, whereas the GX have gone through many years of iteration to kind of perfect that continuous improvement, and therefore trying to make the paint thickness as thin as possible without affecting the overall look and feel. So they probably have gone through that because this was the last year of this Gen Lexus GX, whereas this is still very much in its early stages. It's just the second year. But regardless, I like the fact that its paint is thicker. It's quite a bit thicker than the 2023, and I always said thicker the paint, the better, because it's more durable. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's more shiny. It just means that it is just a little bit more durable over a longer term. But I did notice just now, looking at it one more time, that the clear coat does seem thicker on this one than on the GX. Both had a ceramic coating just a little while ago, but maybe the ceramic coating is a little bit thicker on this one too, which could contribute to the thickness of the overall paint. But right now I'm going to say that the new gen, third gen GX has a slightly better paint job than the 23 GX 460. Now let's take a look at the interior and see if there's any differences in terms of quality. So first, I'm in the 2023 GX. By the way, I'm really glad I haven't sold this one. At some point, I may end up selling it, but it's a last gen GX with a V8. Well, you know what, it's gonna be hard to let this one go, so I plan to keep it for a long time. But let's come back to my topic here, which is comparing my 2025 GX to 2023 GX. And in terms of overall quality for the interior this time, what can I say? Once again, they're both built in Tahara. I expect nothing short of perfect quality, because Tahara is probably the best factory in the world. And as you can tell, you know, everything like super tight. If I do my usual punch test, nothing is loose. Everything fits really tightly. All the components, even the glossy black part, looks really fantastic. This car is 2 years old now, still looks brand new. All the stitching of the leather and the materials looks good. This is soft materials, unlike newer Toyota models. I have a nice satin gray finish in here. So there's nothing that's out of place in this vehicle. It looks absolutely fantastic. It's tight as a drum. You know, when I drive this, there's no squeaks or rattles. But of course, in terms of technology, it is outdated. I do have Apple CarPlay, but it is wired Apple CarPlay. The screen is small. I don't have a digital display here except in the middle section. And I have a radio control here, but for some reason I have a DAC control here. And I still have the little touchpad here as well, although this is also a touch. And the cup holder is a little bit small, and the center console is actually pretty big as well. But I still get a CD player here because it's an old system. And so in terms of the functionality and practicality, it is not anywhere as good as the new GX, which has substantially improved the interior. But the quality control is excellent. Seats are very comfortable in this vehicle. The sunroof is a bit small compared to the new one, and the interior spacing is actually still pretty good. but the new one is quite a bit bigger, both in terms of the length and the width and the height as well. So it is roomier in the new GX as well. Let's go take a look at my new GX now. By the way, I just lined up these two vehicles side by side. The front end is lined up perfectly, and you can tell right away that the wheelbase is quite a bit longer on the new GX. You can see where the wheels are located. And if I keep walking back, the overhang behind the wheel is also quite a bit longer. So the vehicle is really gigantic now. It's almost as big as the Lexus LX now. So this thing is definitely grown in size. It's also quite a bit taller, as you can tell, because this is an overtrail version. This is a black edition. And back in the day, we didn't have an overtrail model for the 2023 model year, but we have the overtrail for the new model year, and it's quite a bit taller with the bigger wheels and so forth. So it is just a bigger model overall, but let's take a look at the interior to see if there is a true improvement in terms of functionality and also if there's any difference in quality. Okay, so I'm in the 2025 Lexus GX 550 now, which is the second year of the third gen. As you guys know, there has only been 3 generations of GX. I've owned all 3. So I did own a GX 470 at one point, and then I also owned the 2016 GX, and then now 2023. In fact, we had 223 GX. One was nori green. This is a white one. We did sell the green one, but I kept the white one here. And then now I have the 2025. So obviously a very loyal GX owner and very excited to own this new model. But what about the quality? Well, it's still pretty tight. Like, I don't know that I can say the quality has improved or gotten worse, because that one is already so good. And all the gaps, all the plastic looks fantastic. It does look richer, I think. It looks much more modern than the 23, with a big 14 screen display, although this part of the screen is taken up by the climate control, and we have the 12.3 inches digital display here as well. So the whole thing is digital now, and then much more updated information, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, bigger cup holders, chargeable pad here, and kind of like a simulated wood panel here as well. So it is bigger, so it's also roomier, much more modern. Not necessarily better looking in the sense that the old GX has that very traditional Lexus feel to it, which I also like, but it is a better design. All the ventilation works better, HVAC works better, there's more technology, there's also even a driver monitoring here, so I can't look away when I'm driving. It has adaptive cruise control, which there is one in the 23 as well, but it works much better on this one because it can also turn almost autonomously. You do have to put your hands on the steering, but it will steer pretty well all through highway. Is something I didn't have on 23. Also, don't forget that the 2025 GX 550 has a lot more safety features. Almost too many things to list here, but if I go into my menu and go drive assist, now I know some of these things are a bit annoying because they're constantly reminding you to stay in lane and not follow too closely to the car in front of you and so forth. But aside from that, there are definitely more proactive and passive safety features in this one than compared to the old one. So I guess if you're taking safety into account, it's also important that the 2025 compared to 2023 has dramatically improved. And it is obviously more roomy because it's a bigger vehicle, and you can notice that in the back seat and also the trunk. And I have a cooler on this one, so it actually keeps everything cool inside. Something that I didn't think I need, but once you have it, I really enjoy having it in the summertime. So the interior quality control, I would say, is the same between the two models. I wouldn't say this is any worse or better, even though it's a newer model. But in terms of practicality, in terms of functionality, and also new features, this is far better than the old one. It'll be hard to kind of go back to the old 23 GX and enjoy the interior because this one is so much better. Also, by the way, this Mark Levinson stereo system is much better than the second gen Lexus GX when I compare side by side. Mine doesn't have a Mark Levinson, but I did compare with another GX with the Mark Levinson from the previous gen, and the new one is significantly better. So I'm really glad they also improved the audio system. Now, here's a big question. How does the two drive? Because that one still has a V8, still has a hydraulic power steering. This one's electric power steering with a twin turbo V6. Let's see how they drive on the road. By the way, I definitely want to talk about the engine differences between these two before I go for a drive. You already know this is a V8, this is a V6, but what you might not be aware is how much more power and torque you get with a twin turbo V6. So this one is a 4.6 liter V8, proven, naturally aspirated, beautiful engine, good for 301 horsepower and 329 pound-foot of torque. So it's actually plenty of power and torque. but it does happen at higher RPM because there's no turbo in this engine, versus my 2025 GX, which has substantially more power, 349 horsepower, and also 479 pound-foot of torque. So a lot more power and torque because it is turbocharged, and of course with turbo you get a lot more power and torque, especially at lower RPM. Keep in mind that this is 6-speed automatic, this is 10-speed automatic, so there is a substantial difference in performance overall just from the powertrain alone. Again, this is old-fashioned design perhaps. This is a new design with much more complications, so long-term reliability is yet to be known. This is proven to be reliable. This one have not had any issues so far, but this engine itself had recall, as you know, in the Tundra and also in the LX. So we just don't know yet if this is going to be reliable over long term, but let's take it for a drive and see if they really do feel any different. Okay, so I'm driving the 2023 GX 460 first. And of course, aside from the obvious, which is the V8 versus V6, you have to remember that this still has hydraulic power steering. Almost all new cars now have electric power steering, not hydraulic, but this one still had a hydraulic, which provides that really hefty feel, solid feedback from the road. It has a bit of a weight to it, so it's nice and heavy, but most of all, it just have a really good feel because this kind of a solid tank-like feel can only be achieved with the hydraulic power steering. You can't get that with electric power steering no matter how much you try. Although on the new GX is better than expected. It's not as quite light as the Land Cruiser I owned, but you know what? You can't beat the hydraulic power steering in terms of feel, in terms of the weight. It just feels very predictable and I love it. The steering just makes the car feel really solid overall. And of course the V8 is what makes this car very special, so I don't have to do very much in terms of acceleration to show you that difference. But if I just step on it a little bit, this very beautiful, natural, organic feel to the acceleration, and just amazing sound to it as well. They don't have to put any artificial sound through the speakers. It just has that right kind of feel to the engine, but also the right sound and the right note. So it's just a beautiful V8, and I'm not really sure if any new car can ever replicate this feel without hydraulic power steering, without a V8 engine, even though they try so hard to make the new models feel solid and feel sporty. But I will also admit that this car is kind of bumpy over a rough road, and around the corners it's not very good. It's kind of tall and it doesn't corner very well. So if you're trying to race through heavy traffic or try to drive through some mountain road, you're going to find that the new GX is going to be better, which I'll show you in a second here. But overall, driving just, you know, around town as a daily driver, this is just better in terms of feel. It has that kind of very solid feel, and the car just feels like a tank, which isn't the case with the new model. But the new GX is definitely better than the Land Cruiser I owned, which felt very light, and I wasn't too crazy about that 2.4 liter powertrain as well. But you know, the most important thing is that if you really like the feel of V8 with no turbo, no hybrid, and you want simplicity in terms of maintenance, well, then you can't beat the V8, especially this particular one, because this engine has been around for a while, and just like the rest of the car, this thing is proven to be the most reliable vehicle in the world, right up there with the past gen 4Runner, which is also very reliable, both built in Tahara plant, and both are just amazing vehicle if you want to keep it for long term. So let's hop into the new GX now, and I'm going to explain the differences. Right now we're just driving in city traffic, so I can't really point out the difference in feel in terms of transmission, because this one is only 6-speed, that one is 10-speed, but if I'm not going to the highway, you're not going to see the transmission shifting all through gears. So I can't quite show you that, but I will show you what the differences are in terms of steering feel, and of course the powertrain and the engine. Okay, I hopped into my 2025 GX 550 now. This is a new gen, third gen, second year of this new generation. It is riding on an all new platform, all new body, TNGA-F platform, and the frames, the powertrain, everything is different. In fact, really the new GX is a completely different car from the old GX. There's no resemblance whatsoever because everything has been changed. But what about the driving feel? Well, I think they tried to mimic the old GX feel with this one, because the steering is a bit heavier than, let's say, in the Land Cruiser, which is a very similar model. And I think they tried to engineer and calibrate the twin turbo V6, so that it kind of feels like a V8. Well, actually, there's no way you can ever make a twin turbo V6 feel like a V8, but they've done a pretty good job because in terms of the overall feel, the acceleration, the general engine feel and so forth, I mean, it's really, really good. It's not a V8 engine. It doesn't have that natural organic feel to it, but in terms of the power delivery, torque delivery is really good, much better than a V8. And they also played with the audio sound because there's some engine sound piped through the speakers, and they're trying to make it sound like a V8. So it does kind of feel like a V8. It's still not a V8, but far better than the 2.4 turbo hybrid in my Land Cruiser that I just sold to buy this one. I'm really glad that I traded up the Land Cruiser for this one because this one is just substantially better. So the V6 is really smooth though, especially because it's got 10-speed automatic, so the shifting, power delivery, the torque delivery at low RPM is all fantastic, world class in fact. You don't need the 3.4 twin turbo V6 with a hybrid like the one you have in Tundra or the Lexus LX 700H, or Sequoia also has it. I don't think you need it on this particular GX. This is way too much power already, and it's far more power and torque than the old GX. But when it comes to like the steering feel, there's still a difference between the two. The GX 460 has the hefty feel to it that really cannot be replicated by electric power steering, which is what we have on the new GX. Well, almost every car out there are all using electric steering, so you don't find hydraulic power steering anymore anyways. But either way, the old steering is better in terms of feedback. The electric power steering, of course, saves gas because it doesn't use hydraulic assist, but the feeling of the steering is different. I would say though that the new GX is much more accurate in terms of steering. So if I move left and right like this, it moves quickly and follows my steering right away. There's no delay. And then when I corner these vehicles, which I can't do right now, but when I corner on a sort of a curvy road, the stability and the cornering is substantially better. We're not talking about like 10% better or 20% better. I think it's like 30-40% better. It's very stable. Even though it's body on frame, it kind of feels like unitized body, and that's a good thing because it means that it's very stable. So if you're wanting to drive the GX in a little bit more of a spirited way, and you want to both enjoy the sporty character of a large SUV, well, you can only do that with a GX 550 and not the GX 460, because the old GX just cannot handle corners and it sways over the place and it's pretty bumpy on the road. So the ride is also better on this one, despite having all-terrain tires. It is a bit smoother, although both are still a little bit bumpy because it's body on frame. They can never quite replicate the feel of a unitized body. So that's my overall driving impression. Do I like the old GX better? I do. I like the hydraulic power steering feel. I like the V8, and therefore I may never sell that vehicle. But this is as good as it's going to get for a new modern SUV with a twin turbo V6 engine and a 10-speed automatic. You can't get much better than this. I've driven so many SUVs that are body on frame with a V6, and I would say this is the best one in terms of kind of mimicking the feel of an old GX and not sacrificing too much going from an old GX to a new GX. And obviously this one is sportier and handles better, corners better, so there's no comparison when it comes to the general handling and also just fun to drive character, if you can even claim that body on frame trucks can be fun to drive, which isn't the case. But if you have to compare the old GX with the new, this is definitely more fun to drive. So that's my kind of basic conclusion for all new GX 550. I'm very happy owning it. I'm very happy that I traded in my Land Cruiser for this one, because the powertrain is better, it's more luxurious, obviously more expensive, but it's worth the upgrade from my perspective anyway. And would I keep this one versus the old one if I have to sell one? That's a tough one, because I really like the sporty character and the handling and the cornering of this vehicle. But I have to admit that the old GX appeal with a V8 and with the heavy steering is something that cannot be replicated anymore. So if I have to sell one right now, I probably will still sell the new one because I can always get this one, but I won't sell the old GX because I can never find old GX in such a great condition, because mine has a low mileage and it's in superb condition. But having said all that, if you're looking for a brand new car and you're not looking for a used car, then GX 550 is a clear choice over a Land Cruiser, or even over the Lexus LX 700H, or Lexus LX600, which is much more expensive, and it's not that much better than the GX. In fact, the GX is a little bit sportier, I would say. So GX 550 is a great buy. I love it. I really do enjoy the ownership so far. It's still pretty new. I've only had it for about 3 weeks now. So as time goes, my perspectives might change, but it's kind of fun to do the direct comparison between the old and the new, V8 versus V6, hydraulic power steering versus electric power steering, 6-speed versus 10-speed. Everything has changed, but not everything is better in the new GX versus the old GX. If you enjoyed my video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe as well? And I will also appreciate some comments below. What do you guys think of the old versus the new GX? Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.